Welcome back, everyone, to R2Kast number 42. Today we've got someone from across the pond in the States. Today we've got Joel. If you'd like to say hello there, Joel.
Hi, it's great to be with you.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you on. And for those of you that don't know Joel, I have had some pretty big guests on in my time. But now I'm sure Joel is very modest with this, but you could argue that he is the world's famous farmer. He has certainly got the biggest Wikipedia of any farmer's page I've seen.
Before we get on into another excellent episode of the R2Kast, I would just like to thank the sponsor for the show today, The Scottish Farmer, a weekly magazine highlighting everything you need to know regarding the Scottish agricultural industry, whether it's breaking news, events happening in the sector, market reports, classified ads, or just wholesome stories happening in the industry. The Scottish Farmer's got it for you.
Joel is a lot involved in organics and such like, which we're going to get into as the podcast goes. But Joel, could you give us a bit of background about yourself? Tell us who Joel Salatin is. Tell us your background. Were you born on a farm? Was farming always for you?
Sure. Well, great. It's great to be with you, Wallace. We came to this farm here when I was 4 years old. And we're in Virginia, in the Virginia Shenandoah Valley, which is on the Atlantic side of the U.S. And Virginia was where Jamestown was, the first colony in the U.S. But of course that was over on the coast. We're on the other end of the state, and so we came in 1961 when I was just 4 years old, and the goal was to farm. But my mom was a school teacher. Dad was a tax accountant, and he always wanted to have a farm. And we searched for how can the farm pay a salary and pay the mortgage. And he finally concluded that it could either pay the mortgage or pay a salary, but it couldn't do both. At least with our level of understanding at that time. And so Dad was quite a visionary. His father, my grandfather, was a charter subscriber to Rodale's Organic Gardening and Farming magazine when it first came out in like 1949. That would have been a friend of, for example, Lady Eve Balfour, who of course was a British icon in the farming movement. So anyway, he basically started experimenting, and we bought this gullied rock pile that was it was the armpit of the community. It was the worst farm in the area. That's why it was cheap, and set about to how can we heal this? How can we bring fertility? And so we started looking at nature's templates and realized that nature's templates are not that complicated. One is that nature has animals everywhere. There's no animalless ecology. Animals move. They don't stay in the same place. They move around. And fertility is run by basically decomposition, carbon decomposition. And nature doesn't plow. It doesn't till. It doesn't invert the soil layers. And most of the production in nature is consumed pretty close to where it's grown, which sounds a lot like local food systems. And so, armed with those kind of very simple ideas, we began large-scale composting. We bought a wood chipper, began working in the woodlot, upgrading the woodlot, taking down junk, and began using that for bedding for livestock. We experimented with electric fence. Dad actually invented several tools at that time, early 60s. That was when electric fence was still very rudimentary. And we started moving the cows around, and from paddock to paddock. Dad got a hold of some material from Andre Voisin, who is still the godfather of controlled grazing, and we began moving the herds around. And then as I came on at 10 years old, I got my first chickens, and by 13 they had grown to where we'd outgrown the old the backyard chicken house, and Dad had totally gotten onto this animal movement thing with portable infrastructure, portable control, portable housing, portable water. And so we adapted that to the chickens, started moving the chickens around, moving rabbits around, moving cows around, moving sheep around. And we've just continued to refine that over time, so that today the farm is, we have about 25 salaries that are generated from the farm. We service about 8,000 families, perhaps 50 institutional, restaurants, institutional clients, and we ship nationwide. And we have about 1,000 head of cattle. We raise about 800 hogs a year, 25 to 30,000 broilers. We have about 4,000 laying hens, and a flock of sheep and rabbits. I don't know, maybe 80 does, a rabbit. So it's a significant thing. And we have a sawmill. So we mill a lot of lumber and things, and work in the woods a lot. And we use a lot of composting, a lot of wood, and we do this major composting with pigs. So instead of making big windrow compost piles, instead we use pigs to do the turning and the aerating. And so we're all about pigs doing the work. So it's a very animal centric, vibrant, direct marketed, local centric type of operation in the pastured livestock space.
It's great you mentioned the aeration of the compost for the pigs, because I've literally written that down. I think it's one of the most interesting things that I've heard from Polyface Farm. And we hadn't actually mentioned the farm Joel is on is Polyface Farm. If you have any form of social media, it's huge on all social media, over 100,000 on Instagram. Facebook's bigger, I think. So if you want to follow what's happening, make sure to do so. You probably won't notice anyone coming over from here, Joel, but it's maybe not quite as big as you guys. But it's interesting you called your father a visionary, and I think a lot of people would say that about their father. But when you really look at what your dad was doing in the 60s, like that's insane how early that was. A lot of these technologies you were talking about are things that are still being spearheaded now, which is quite something.
Right.
You mentioned about nature doesn't till, which I thought was a really good way to put that. Could you just explain what you mean by tilling to our viewers, and why we want to minimize that?
You mean nature, the nature's template is pretty specific, and so when you look at nature, nothing in nature really plows. I mean, except I guess pigs. Pigs plow a little bit, but nature is founded on perennials, not annuals. And so whenever the most soil damaging thing that you can do is to plow, is to till the soil. Now, I'm not saying that that's a sin to do. I'm not saying that but I'm just saying that nature doesn't do it at all, and so we should attempt to be as minimalistic as we possibly can. And as you probably know, right now, some of the most cutting edge regenerative soil systems right now being developed are how do we grow grain, how do we grow crops with no tillage. Before now, it's been done primarily with herbicides. No-till agriculture is kind of synonymous with, we use herbicides to knock back the weeds in the grass, and we can plant, barley or rye or corn or something. Whereas now there are more and more sophisticated protocols for rolling down a smother crop and planting into it, so that you have a smother crop that actually mulches and lets the crop come up through. One of the we've done twice now is the Australian visionary Colin Seiss, who has developed a system called pasture cropping. And pasture cropping is where you use livestock to temporarily weaken a sod, weaken a pasture, long enough to get an annual into it, corn, soybeans, barley, wheat, oats, to get an annual into it and get it ahead of the grass. The annual then shades out the grass. The grass mulches and acts as a weed suppressant, and simply the grass kind of grows in a retarded state underneath that fast growing annual. And then when the annual is ready to harvest, the grain, the sod, as the leaves start to desiccate and fall off of the grain crop, that opens up light into the, through the canopy into the sod again. The sod begins to green up, the grass starts to grow. And so when you combine the crop off, you've still got your sod, and you can actually go in with a grazing animal, shortly after harvesting the crop off, and it doubles up your production per acre while protecting the soil and parking the plow in the garage. So it's these are really, really cutting edge things. And I think they're going to proliferate dramatically, as we go forward.
I guess one of the benefits you didn't mention of reduced plow use is less carbon getting thrown into the air. We're not opening up that soil. We're reducing compaction, and hopefully all in all, it's a win-win when you put it that way, really. There's the obvious win to plowing, but when you're really looking at it from a sustainability and furthermore regenerative perspective, it's a win. You mentioned earlier on, Joel, I just sort of missed what the reason was. You mentioned you would chip. Was that for bedding, did you say? No?
Yes.
Yeah.
So there are times, as you know, Wallace, there are times when you want to bring animals into shelter. It may be winter, snow, it may be extremely wet, where the livestock would what we call pug up, pug the ground. So there are absolutely times to house animals. And normally when we think of housing animals, we think of either concrete that we scrape every day, or you think of some sort of a slatted floor, like in piggeries, where the manure goes through into a slurry system. But what we do every time, whether it's chickens, rabbits, pigs, cows, sheep, whatever it is, when we house those animals, for us it's winter, about 100 days in the winter. We get about 2/3 of a meter of snow a winter. So we have the animals inside for about 100 days a year in the winter, cold snow, that sort of thing. And so we use deep bedding. So here's the thing: in the winter, not only is the soil extremely fragile, it's damp, it's not alive, it's kind of dormant. And so it definitely does not want a bunch of movement and impaction during the wintertime. And of course, those animals, they're still pooping and peeing, in the winter. They don't stop, And so here you have all this fertility going on dormant soil that can't metabolize it, when the soil is sleeping. And so all that nutrient either goes into the aquifer, through the soil into an aquifer, or if it's dry, if the weather's dry, it vaporizes into the air, and we all know what that smells like. Go by any, confinement house, you know what that smells like. You're smelling the nitrogen, the ammonia, going off in the air. So what we do is we use what we call a carbonaceous diaper. So this can be any kind of carbon. It can be wood chips, sawdust, leaves, straw, corn fodder, ground up corn cobs, leaves, anything that's brown. And we put that down and let that build up, and it'll build up, 4 feet deep in some cases, but extremely, but that deep bedding, we call it the carbonaceous diaper, and that locks up the manure and the urine in a carbon sponge. And in the case of the pigs and the chickens, where they're turning it, it's actually composting, as they add to it. For the cows, where they're not turning it, it simply beds up and it ferments. They're trumping out the oxygen and it ferments. We add corn to that. The corn ferments in that deep bedding pack. When the cows come out in the spring and begin grazing again, we put in pigs, and the pigs then seek the fermented corn and churn it up, adding oxygen and converting that whole pack from anaerobic to aerobic compost. We haven't had to use any petroleum, no machinery, no time, no labor. The pigs love it. It's hog heaven for the pigs. And it fully respects and honors the pigness of the pigs, lets them now not just be pork chops and bacon. They're actually co-laborers in this great land healing ministry. And when the pigs are done with the aeration and it composts and smells like forest soil, then we spread that out on the fields, and that closes our fertility, our fertilizer loop.
No, making use of natural processes for our gain, for everything's gain, has got to make sense. The saying is literally a pig in shit, yeah, and you're going with that. You're using that, which is brilliant to hear. Just everything come in at different parts. It's refreshing, actually. I kind of want to get into the stock you've got, Joel, as well. Did you say 1,000 cattle? What breed is that? Is that just everything, or is that?
Yeah, we're not real breed specific. Although right now I will tell you that our bulls, we're using right now South Pole bulls. That's a fairly new breed in the United States. South Pole. It's a composite breed from about 4 different lines. That's been developed over the last 40 years by a guy named Teddy Gentry, who is one of the singers for the country music group Alabama. And yeah. And he's basically invested his fortune in trying to develop a forage-based breed of animal. They're small, thin-legged and wide-bodied. They got we like to call them barrel on toothpicks, and and that's what you want in grass finishing. When the industry has moved our cow size to a huge size. Let's see. I've got to think about kilograms here. So most cows now in the U.S. are running probably 700 kilos.
Yeah, imagine that. Yeah.
Okay, but what we want in grass finishing, we want more like a 450 kilo cow, much smaller. And the reason is because the bigger the animal, the more just energy it takes per kilo to maintain. It's like a steam engine, a steam locomotive, and it simply takes way more per kilo to keep that animal going. And so the reason these animals have gotten big is not because they're actually functional on the farm or because they're healthier or taste better or anything like that. The reason they've gotten big is because the industry, the processing industry, which fabricates and takes that animal and turns it into T-bone steaks and ribeyes and ground beef, that is actually more efficient on a big carcass than a small carcass, because if you're going to cut out ribeye steaks, it's a lot better to cut out 14 from a carcass than 12 from a carcass. It's like the difference between Duplos and Legos. You've got a bigger piece. And so what's happened is that the processing end of the industry has driven now the genetic end, but the efficiency to maximize efficiency on the processing end actually makes an animal that's less vital, that's less resilient, that is more prone to, disease problems and actually more inefficient on the farmer's end. But like so many things, farmers tend to go with the diktats of the other end, and they kind of hurt themselves genetically.
They're pushed in that direction from a financial incentivization, aren't they? I mean, at the end of the day, it's a business, and sometimes you've got to push that way. And it's again, I've said the word refreshing before, to look at the sort of efficiency, the quality that sort of not pushing. I mean, the Belgian Blue is always the one that jumps to mind. It just looks like an actual tractor. It doesn't appeal to me personally, but it's good to hear. What age?
The thing is, we have these kind of two ideas in tension. One is resilience, and one is efficiency. And I mean, we all want to be efficient, but at the end of the day, if you're not resilient first, you don't have anything to be efficient about. And so resiliency has to be more important than efficiency. Once you have resiliency, then you want to be as efficient as possible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What age are you killing the cattle?
Yeah, so we're normally processing somewhere between 28 and 34 months.
Yeah, so a year on top of a sort of intense process, maybe even a year and a half. Yeah,
that's right.
No,
they grow a little slower, but that allows the amino acids to actually become more complex. The older an animal gets, the more complex the amino acids. We're all familiar with complex and simple sugars. We all know that complex sugars are better than simple sugars. And the same thing is true with amino acids. The more complex amino acids are better for us than the simple amino acids. And so our fixation in the livestock industry in growing them faster and then slaughtering faster, butchering faster, earlier, at earlier pubescence, it doesn't allow the sophisticated amino acid complex to actually come to its full fruition. So then what happens is our microbiome, our nutritional needs then get deprived of the level of complexity that our microbiome wants, in this simplicity, just like it gets deprived of polysaccharides when we feed it high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah. I'm really enjoying listening to it. I learned so much as this goes. I'm probably looking like I'm not understanding it, and the reason for that is I am not. The amino acid stuff was maybe a bit over my head, but really interesting stuff. I'm focusing in on sort of each livestock at the minute. You said you had 800 hogs. I'm guessing that's pigs in the States.
Yeah, pigs.
Again, is that just a variation of breeds playing their role in the system as aerators? We're not real breed specific. We're much more phenotype specific. Yep. So what we've learned, at least our experience is that every breed has functional and dysfunctional phenotypes or genetics. And so there is actually more variety, let's say from the top to the bottom within a breed than there is from breed to breed. So what we're looking, so our pig breeds are all over the place, and essentially we're looking for a 1950s phenotype. We call it the torpedo body type, where we don't want this hyped up extra long, extra lean, extra wide rear end on a hog. Those hogs that are bred like that, those whatever they're IPC hogs, or I don't know what they're called, but anyway, they're the ones you see at all the shows. And when we put those out on pasture, they actually fall apart. They simply don't have enough fat and enough
kinetic functionality. They actually walk like they hurt, like they have arthritis, and they just don't function for us. So we're looking for what we call state of the art 1950s genetics, and those are the pigs that do really, really well.
Well, those other ones you're talking about are built for intensity. Yeah, they're built for that intense, fully grain-fed
yes
diet, and it's like anything. If something's built for something, you put it on something else, it doesn't work. It'd be like me on a vegan diet, you know.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Mm-hmm. Are they for sausages, bacon, everything?
Everything. So we got into pigs years and years ago to do our composting, to do our compost turning. That's why we got into pigs, but they tasted so good, our customers wanted more, and so we began raising them and outside. And so what we do is we raise them in groups of 35 to 50 in a group, and give them again, I'm going to be acres. So we give them about a half an acre, which would be a quarter of a hectare.
Just under a quarter of a hectare, yeah.
Yeah, about a quarter of a hectare. Every 5 to 12 days, and we move them every 5 to 12 days. And mainly we don't run those in the real nice pastures, because pigs they definitely make divots in a pasture. So we raise them what we call out on the edges. So in the woods edges, maybe some scruffy, brushy land, but not our best land. And we have those in these paddocks, and the pigs really really exercise that ecology and move the vegetation. We've gone into places that were just thick with brambles and honeysuckle and thorns, and in 6 years it's just beautiful silvo pasture, where the pigs have worked it.
So the grey, you're throwing corn into the compost that the pigs then take. Is that the only thing on top of pasture based that they're eating? So it's all pasture, and then that's the only corn. Or you also?
They get their pigs are omnivores. They get a ration. Yeah, they get it now. When they're doing the pigerating, the compost pigerating, they don't get any feed at all, because they have the fermented corn in there, and so they have to work for supper while they're doing that. And we watch them. Obviously, we don't make them eat every single kernel. You just can't. I mean, they would get skinny. So so we lose we lose about 10% probably of the corn in there. But when we spread the compost, then we run the chickens, the egg mobiles we call them, they're portable hen houses. We run that behind where we spread, so the chickens can salvage out the last of the corn pieces that the pigs missed.
And my knowledge of pigs is quite minimal. What age do they go to slaughter? Is that like sort of 150 days or something like that, or is it?
So we get the pigs at 8 to 10 weeks, and then we keep them for another 6 months. So they're somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 9 months when we go to slaughter. Now we do take them up bigger than normal. Most pigs, let's see, kilos, 250 pounds would be about
110 something like that.
110 kilos. All right, so we take them up to 300 pounds to about 140 kilos, and so we take the pigs up a little bigger, and a bigger pig is more efficient at metabolizing grass than a small pig. And so by taking them up into a bigger size, we actually leverage the pasture that we have, so that instead of losing feed conversion later, we're actually converting more green material, which makes a much better tasting pig. Our pork is actually rose colored. It's not white. You don't want white pork. White indicates anemia, iron deficiency. And so our pork is actually rose colored. And that indicates iron and carotenes. It's a higher nutritional profile.
Yeah, a higher carotenoid content. Yeah, no, that's interesting. That is actually, because when you think pork, you think that whitey, pink, absolute best meat. You don't think rose. No, that's good. Sheep. How many sheep do you have? Sorry, Joe.
Yeah, our sheep is our grandson's project. He's 16
Right.
years old, and so he's had sheep since he was about 11, and he's up to about 35 ewes now, I think. So when they all lamb, they should all lamb in about the next month, and when they lamb, he'll be up to maybe 65, 70, maybe even 80. He's had real good success and a lot of twins. And yeah, so it's a small flock of hair sheep.
It's a small. Did you say wool sheep there? Did you say it was wool sheep, Joe?
No, they're hair sheep. Hair sheep.
Sorry, got you.
Mhm.
Heard you wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, small sheep project. You started with the chicken project, which takes me on to the next part.
I hope you've kicked your feet up and got comfy and enjoying another fantastic episode of the R2Kast with another really interesting guest. I would just like to quickly take another second to plug the sponsors of the show today, the Scottish Farmer, and I would strongly advise you to go out and pick one up this week and see even more of the fantastic people that are in our industry.
Was it 30,000 broilers and 4,000 layers?
Yes.
A notable enterprise now, just for those of you listening, layers are egg producing hens, broilers are meat.
Yeah.
Got to clear that part up first. How long does it take to get to that size? It's so many birds, but you don't see a smaller than that size bird population because it needs to be that big. And also, what age are you killing the broilers at?
Yeah, the broilers, the meat birds, we dress at either 7, 8, or 9 weeks, depending on our customer and the weight we want them. And so we get a new batch roughly every 3 weeks, and we spread that out over a 3-week processing window, so we don't have to start a new batch every single week. I know that's kind of unusual in the industry, but we're a small operation, and so we want to amalgamate our chick time, and not have to start all the time. The beauty of our broiler enterprise especially is, if you want to raise chickens for the industry, it takes a pretty substantial number and investment just to start, to put in a house and get all that started. Whereas what we have are these little, they're roughly 3 meter by 4 meter by 2 feet, 2/3 of a meter high, little boxes, floorless boxes that are very, very lightweight. And with a very simple dolly, we can move those across the pasture. There's no floor in them. We put about 75 chickens in each one. We move them every single morning, so they get a totally fresh spot of pasture, fresh bugs, worms, all that, each day. Of course, they also get a feeder like the pigs do. And so every day they get a totally fresh area to be in that they haven't, been on. We only touch a given square foot with them only 1 day per year. So it's 1 day on and a year rest before they come back to that same spot. And with our little system, one person with using a little dolly, one person can move 4,500 chickens in 60 minutes without starting an engine. And so those little shelters protect them from aerial predators, ground predators, and the weather. Because remember, they're going out on pasture at 2 weeks old. So they're little itty bitty chicks, and they'd be very vulnerable to even, starlings and crows would even pick them up. So they're extremely vulnerable to predators. And so the beauty of this system is that you can scale it up over time, because the infrastructure is modular. You don't have to start with this great big thing. You can start with this little one, and if you like it, you can build another one. If you like it, you can build. We have 200, so we have enough capacity, to house 15,000 chickens at once. But they're in 200 modular field shelters, and And so that allows you to grow, to scale by duplication, not centralization.
And I like that idea. I'd quite like to see a photo of that just to try and visualize it. How many eggs are you looking for out of a bird in, let's say, a year period?
Well, we just talked about the broilers. So the egg layers, they're in a different situation. They're in either egg mobiles, which are totally portable houses that follow the cows, and the chickens scratch through the cow patties and spread out the cow patties and sanitize them from bugs and worms and parasites. And then the other one is a Millennium Feather Net, which is an A-frame field shelter for 1,000 birds that we move every about 3 or 4 days with electric netting, electric poultry netting around it. And we move it across the field. So one is more land extensive, one is more land intensive. But yeah, out of those 4,000 layers, if we say that we average a rolling annual flock average of 50% lay, then we're getting right at what 160 dozen, 160 dozen per day. Times 365 is whatever that is. It's a lot of eggs.
A lot of eggs. Yeah, I can't work that one out in my head. I'm normally quite good, but that's a lot. That's a bit too big. And how far are eggs sold? All in the very local area? Because eggs don't transport well, I don't think.
Right. We don't ship the eggs.
No, I assume that. Is it?
We do. We do deliver eggs, obviously, to our. So we have several thousand families in the urban sector, with about 32 what we call neighborhood drop points. So this is that they purchase on the internet, and then we go at an appointed time. We service these folks monthly. So we go once a month with into these urban drop points. Everybody meets us there, gets their stuff, and so it makes it easy for they can order from our full inventory. So our full inventory is available to them, as opposed to like a box scheme, a box scheme, you have to take what's in the box. So our folks can cherry pick. They have complete freedom of choice for whatever's in our inventory. And then we deliver it into their neighborhood, and they just come at the appointed time and pick it up. And we service those accounts. We service those, monthly. So obviously we take eggs, we deliver eggs with us when we go, and we service a lot of restaurants as well. And we have numerous restaurants that take eggs. And then we also service a couple of boutique grocery stores that take eggs as well.
The fancy ones.
Right.
Now, I've went through every other animal, so I have to involve, and I've left it till last because I'm quite interested in it. Rabbits, for meat, for pelt, for what are you, or for everything?
Yeah. For meat, rabbits for meat. Mm-hmm.
Are they involved in the system? Do they have a job or not?
Well, initially their job was that our son Daniel, when he was 8, wanted a farm enterprise that was his own. And he took an interest in rabbits. Said, I think I'd like to raise rabbits. Well, I wasn't raising rabbits. The farm didn't have rabbits. So that was something that he could do entrepreneurially as a child that was autonomous, that was his. And so initially the rabbits offered a completely autonomous, child-friendly, entrepreneurial opportunity for him. And so, they are they're just another enterprise. Now, the rabbits then are housed at eye level, and their manure and everything drops onto the floor, and there's chickens underneath them. So chickens then scratch through what the rabbits drop with carbon and aerate it and keep it composting, so there's no odor in the rabbitry. And that's fundamental, because rabbits are a little bit like pigs. They're actually quite fastidious, and they choose a they choose a pee spot, and so they go to that and they pee there. And so what happens then is over time you get this soaked area that just stinks to high heaven because it's all wet and ammonia and all that. So the chickens being underneath the rabbits, scratching around the carbon, keep all that urine driving a compost on the bedding, and that eliminates any odors, keeps the rabbits healthier because they're not, getting that ammonia vapors up through them, and it grows a lot of bugs and worms and things for the chickens to enjoy. So it's a very synergistic kind of thing.
And I guess, I mean, the famous saying, breeding like rabbits, is going from very few rabbits to a lot of rabbits something you can do pretty quickly. I mean, what's the gestation of a rabbit? I don't know that. Maybe you don't either.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
In general, we like to see a doe have four litters a year. Now that's less than the industry. The industry often pushes them to like 7 litters a year. It's less than a month. But we've just, again, that by backing off a little bit and letting the doe not work quite as hard, she's healthier, she lasts longer, and we can still make real good with 4 litters a year, which if you average 7 bunnies per litter, 4 times 7 is 28. So, if you want to actually grow protein, there is nothing I know that will produce as many pounds of protein per square foot as rabbits.
I think the only thing that's comparable would be insects, which
yes,
you'd probably get a finger in that pie.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right about that. I expect grasshoppers and mealyworms would be, just a little bit better. But I kind of like rabbit meat better than grasshoppers.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. But surely one of your grandkids, by the sound of the Salatin history, will come around and they'll be on crickets soon enough. Crickets will turn. This is I did this in my masters. Crickets will turn 1 kilo of food into 1.1 kilo, like of edible for us. And I think that's just insane. But anyway, it's,
that is.
Yeah, so in a couple of years, Polyface Farm I'll be doing crickets and mealworms and all that as well, and then you'll be integrating that into the ration for everything, and then it'll all can't wait to see it. Yeah, listen, I absolutely love talking about the processes and the livestock and how they all have a job. I absolutely love that. I think it's excellent, and it's great to see so many family members getting involved as well. But you mentioned you had 25 salaries, Joel. Is that just people working on the ground? Is that management? Is that everything?
Well, it's everything. So that includes delivery truck delivery drivers. It includes sales, salespeople making phone calls, accountants, the financial end of it, management. It's everything. Probably, of those 25. Probably 15 are active, day-to-day production. But we have a full-time mechanic, we have a full-time maintenance technician who fixes, when a piece of roofing starts flapping, somebody's got to get up there and fix that. So there's on a farm, as there's always stuff to fix and repair, and fences to fix and gates to build, and those sorts of things. So yeah, it's it's not a backyard operation. I failed to mention, we also raise about 1,500 turkeys a year. So here the turkey market is primarily Thanksgiving here, so we do some Thanksgiving turkeys as well.
Is the turkey market for Christmas big in the States or not?
Yes, some, but it's primarily Thanksgiving and then secondarily Christmas. Yes.
It's called Turkey Day, isn't it? Thanksgiving.
Yes, Thanksgiving's called Turkey Day. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, no, we don't do Thanksgiving here at all. It's not a thing that happens at this side of the water at all.
Yes.
On the sawmill side of things, are you selling like bespoke timber, or are you aiming for tables, or are you just selling wood as fuel?
Well, we'll sell anything. We'll sell anything that we can. Uh, anything that keep the taxes paid. We sell. I mean, obviously, much of the lumber that we mill is for our own projects because we have shelters, feather nets, gobbledygos, egg mobiles, all sorts of corrals, gate, all sorts of, feed mangers, all sorts of things, buildings and things that we build. But we also sell into the neighborhood. If somebody wants, the beauty of having the sawmill is that we can custom cut dimensions. So for example, if somebody wants to replace the deck on a hay wagon, for example, you can't go down to the hardware store and buy, a 3-inch by 10-inch timber. You can't do it. It can't be done. And so, but they can come over here and we can custom cut any dimension lumber that they want. So we can make, fireplace, anything from fireplace mantles to cabinetry dimensions to, raw, like a hay wagon deck. And so, most of what we do is utility material, but we definitely have, we have some black walnut and cherry that we cut into dimension and sell that at a nice price for artisanal craft, cabinet makers, table furniture type craft people that are looking for, specialty wood. There are a few things. Probably my favorite wood in the world is black walnut. Black walnut wood is just a gorgeous, beautiful wood. But cherry is very good too. And of course, there's a lot of stuff built out of oak and poplar and things like that. So, we sell some, and we use a lot ourselves.
I just Googled black walnut as you said it there. It's gorgeous. It's lovely.
Yeah. It is.
I bet they pay a pretty, well, it'll be a pretty cent in the States for that. Yeah.
Yes.
So one thing I love about talking to Americans and Australians is you have the best nicknames for things. Gobbledygoes has got to be the highlight of this podcast. That's a belter.
Yeah. The gobbledygook. Yeah, that's for turkeys.
Yeah. I guess that I like that a lot. Yeah, look, it's class to chat about the farm side of things. I've got a few other questions, Joel, while I've got you. As I do with every podcast guest I have on, I look them up. Some people harder than others. You were certainly not difficult to find anything about yourself. There's a lot on there. And I clicked through and I clicked on awards, and I saw you were a Heinz Award winner. Now, Heinz is a food, probably one of the only food brands that even people that have nothing to do with farming are aware of. Could you tell us what that award was for and how that came about?
Yeah, that award was for sustainable agriculture. That was several years ago, and the Heinz family, which is famous for ketchup, they began this kind of award program to honor people in agriculture, but other areas as well, who are devoted, leading, innovating in sustainability. And that we got I don't know who nominated us. Somebody obviously nominated us, and it went through the pipeline. We didn't know about it until we got a phone call and said, can you come to this ceremony and get an award? And we said, well, I guess we could figure out how to get there. And so that was pretty neat.
It would be rude not to. It wasn't down to the 57 varieties of livestock you have, though.
No.
I just realised there. I focused heavily in on the livestock. It's all around pasture based and that sort of thing. Do you grow your own crops as well to bring in the grain, or are you bringing that grain in from somewhere else?
We are bringing the grain in from nearby local farmers. It's all GMO free, so non-genetically modified organisms, and we use a local mill that we actually helped to get started about, well, when GMOs came in, we helped this family take an old 1950s mill and actually, rehab it and start in so that this mill actually takes in no GMO material, so nobody can, push the wrong button or whatever. And all of our grain comes from local farmers here, and we're excited to be able to ensure that much acreage is GMO free. It's kind of fun.
No, it's good. And are you growing any grass that hasn't been grazed? Do you cut any for silage, hay, haylage, that sort of thing?
We make all of our own hay. We've dabbled a little bit with grass silage in the past, not much, but mainly, we do make our own hay. We don't buy hay and we don't sell hay. We just make all our own. Mm-hmm.
I take it you'll get pretty long, warm, dry summers. Is that right?
Well, I mean, obviously, what's normal. Our normal rainfall is 31 inches, which is what 800 mil, roughly. But we have droughts like everybody else, and so we have wet summers and dry summers, and but certainly our summers are hotter than Britain, and much drier in that respect. But certainly not as dry as out west, Oklahoma and Nevada, Utah. I mean, those places are really dry, but it's definitely not a Mediterranean climate like Spain or California, where you have a wet season and a dry season. It's more metered throughout the season.
No, that was sort of the question was about. I mean, we here in Southwest Scotland are looking at, and someone will be out here saying I'm wrong, anywhere between 900 and 1,000 mils. So it's not far off that. I thought it would be a bit less than that, to be honest. Away from farming, you are a speaker, a writer, everything. You've done it all. Written a few books. Were they just all based around production techniques and such like that, Joel, or was there any novels in there?
No. Well, you know what? No, there aren't any novels yet, but I did start one a couple of years ago, and I just got bogged down. And I find fiction's hard. I mean, you have to imagine something. When I'm writing nonfiction, I'm just basically telling my story, telling information. So I've written 15 books, and most of them are about production, regenerative agriculture, techniques, things that we've done in the different things. But several of them are more philosophical, like Folks, This Ain't Normal is about how abnormal our culture is, historically, where we're eating unpronounceable food and people don't have any connection to their food, and children don't have chores anymore. Those kinds of things. I call my soul book The Sheer Ecstasy of Being a Lunatic Farmer. That's a fun book, a lot of humor in that, but it's essentially trying to explain the difference between us and mainline agriculture. Marvelous Pigness of Pigs is basically environmental ethics for the religious right, for the faith community. And they've been all over, but certainly the theme, my niche, my theme is certainly, farming and food, and, how do we do this in a way that actually heals rather than hurts.
And I want to have to ask about, because I think the name's brilliant. Everything I Want to Do is Illegal. What's that about?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's one. So that's one that a lot of people don't realize how prejudicial food laws are, food regulations. They're extremely prejudicial to small operations. In other words, it's much easier to comply and to get licenses if you're big than if you're small. So they're extremely prejudicial regulations, and I think that if a law is easier to comply with if you're big than if you're small, it's an inherently incorrect law. And so I know the same thing is true in Great Britain, because before COVID, I had been in I mean, I know you're in Scotland, in the greater, Greater Britain. I know that this is a common issue, because people talked about it to me, just like we do in the States, where these small community abattoirs are finding it more and more difficult to comply with these very difficult food regulations that at the end of the day don't have anything to do about the quality of the food, but they have everything to do about paperwork, checking boxes, and infrastructure. And so everything I want to do is illegal. Just explain. We've had numerous run-ins with the bureaucracy. Some, we have been more tense than others. And there are a lot of things that we would like to do here that that we can't. We would love to be able to, to milk a cow and sell raw milk to a neighbor. We would love to be able to, make ice cream and sell to a neighbor. We'd like to be able to make our own, smoked sausage here on the farm and sell that to a neighbor. But, smoking sausage is considered manufacturing, and manufacturing is not allowed in agricultural zones. So that's not a food safety issue. That's a zoning issue. And so, you just run into all these things where a person, especially a small operation, their hands are tied to do a lot of innovative, creative things. Including building a vacation cottage. Maybe people want to come out and spend a week at your farm. Well, how easy is it to get a license to be able to build a cottage, a vacation cottage on your farm? You've got zoning, you've got building inspection, you got all these things, and they're all much more difficult when you're small than when you're large.
Yeah, not easy at all is the answer. How easy is that? Yeah,
right.
and
yes.
Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the sort of slaughterhouse abattoir situation over here, flying down at an alarming rate, and it's all an economies of scale thing, like you're saying.
Yeah, right.
Just one thing, you're in some ways maybe not the father of this stuff, Joel, but it's certainly, when we hear the word regenerative agriculture, your name is certainly one in that discussion. Could you tell us what regenerative agriculture is? And just before you do, I've got a little adage that I've heard before. I heard someone say that a sustainable relationship is coming home, having your dinner, getting on with your partner, going to sleep, and not arguing. A regenerative relationship is coming home with some flowers, a lovely meal, candlelit dinner, whatever happens before you go to sleep, and then waking up in the morning. So that's my sort of comedy version of what regenerative agriculture is, but what actually is regenerative agriculture?
Yeah, in other words, regenerative agriculture is sustainable agriculture on steroids.
Yes. Pretty much.
There's a couple aspects to it. One for me is that regenerative agriculture needs to leave the commons, needs to leave more equity in the commons than was there before you started. The commons is air, soil, water, even cultural equity. And so as a result of us being here, as a result of our farming, there should be more commons, not less commons. And if you study the history of agriculture throughout history, generally agriculture depletes the commons. Mm-hmm. There's less soil, less water, those sorts of things. So it needs to increase the commons. Number two, it needs to have relational succession. And so, my real quick answer is regenerative agriculture creates a place that is attractive to the next generation. A regenerative farm should be a place that's supporting two salaries from two different generations to ensure that there is successional regeneration. And that's an aspect that too often is not discussed. We tend to think about the physical ecology of the soil, the plants, and the animals, but we don't think about the relational ecology of the personnel. And so that's a critical aspect,
which is important. It's not just doing well now. We've got to continue that, and yeah, no, absolutely. Listen, it's been great, Joel. I mean, I think when I first reached out to Instagram page with 120,000 followers, I thought I wouldn't get through, but managed to email you, and you responded within about 6 hours, which was a bit mental. So thank you for that. But two things I ask everyone before we finish every podcast is, one, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And two, if you had any tips for folk coming into agriculture, what would they be?
Good questions. They're good questions. In 5 years, well, if I'm still healthy and living, I hope to be doing exactly what I'm doing now, and of course, hopefully, we'll have some new collaborators and deeper relationships and friendships along the way. So that's what I hope for in the future. As far as the best advice for somebody coming into agriculture, I think the most important thing that I can say is to stay with it. I'm quick to tell people I'm not smarter or better or more hardworking than anybody else. One of the reasons we've been successful is because we were just too stubborn to quit. It hasn't been easy, especially in those early days, and most people get discouraged. And so the night is darkest before the dawn. And if you can push through, the frustration and the lack of knowledge, the ignorance, all those things, if you can push through that and just stay with it, you will become a master. You will find techniques and goodness and relationships, help from friends, new people to come alongside. And if you just stay with it long enough. So persistence is probably the most important element here, because nothing new is easy. And especially if you go against the grain, everybody will tell you you're crazy and it won't work and all that. But if you'll continue, my dad used to say, if at first you don't suck a seed, just suck and suck and suck until you do suck a seed, right. And just be persistent. And that's probably the best thing that I can tell a young person, because if you stay with it, you will learn. Stay malleable, stay open to new ideas, but mainly you just have to outlast. You have to outlast the discouragement, and eventually you'll get really good at it.
No, good stuff.
Not discouragement. You'll get good at farming.
Yeah. I assume that. That would be quite a rubbish takeaway if you meant the discouragement side of it. I like the suck a seed one, and what I take from that is, maybe you learned you couldn't suck a seed, so what you did was you started to get your pigs to do it. Was what you've done. So right. It's no. Listen, it's been great to chat, Joel. I appreciate you coming on. I'm sure you're a very busy man. For those of you listening, we had a bit of confusion. Joel came on an hour early than I thought because we had some time zone confusion, which I will hold my hands up and accept the blame for. But yeah, it's been a great chat. I could have sat and talked for 2 hours about different things, but conscious of time. And for those of you listening, I hope you've enjoyed. I'm sure you have. If you've any questions, just get in touch with me. As always, make sure to follow Rural to Kitchen on Facebook and Instagram. And just because we've got Joel on, check out Polyface Farm. on all the relevant socials as well. Now, very much smaller over here than Joel is, so he might not even notice people coming over. And for those of you that listen to the podcast weekly, next week is podcast number 43, well on our way to half of a century of podcasts now. Next week is with Zena of Welsh Cottage by Zena. Zena looks at sort of what we can do with relatively wasty products in this country now. Wool is a great product, but it costs nothing. She looks at what we can do with wool. She's got bees, she's got everything, and I really look forward to chatting. Joel, have you got anything else you'd like to say?
No, just thank you very much for joining you, and I hope with travel restrictions hopefully easing that I'll be able to get back over to one of my favorite places over there, in the future. Just I love all the Irish, Scottish, British folks, and it's always delightful to be on that big island.
Well, I tell you what, I am from a small island off of the Scotland, so always welcome there. It would be great to have you. I'm a lecturer as well. It'd be great to have you in chatting to students, and maybe to return the favour, I will hopefully be in your neck of the woods at some point and pop over for a beer and some of that lovely pork.
I hope you will. Yeah, I hope you will.
Grant, great to chat.
Thank you so much. Take care.
No, thank you, and we'll see you all in a week's time.
Well, that's it. Another R2Kast finished, another agricultural mind opened up. And I would just like to say that getting these guests on board, it does take time, and it always has done, but I've now went weekly, and with that comes even more time required. And I would just like to finally thank once more the Scottish Farmer for sponsoring the show and making that much more possible. Please be sure to get in touch if you've any ideas of people you'd like to see on the podcast, or maybe ideas you have for me presenting better, because I definitely do require that. See you in the next one.